ChatGPT moment for humanoid robots or for embodied intelligence. And that effectively is when you can just say to a humanoid robot without pre-programming it, you just say, do this or do that. And it will be able to do about 80% of those tasks. That moment, which is called the ChatGPT moment for humanoid robots, is estimated by Wang Xingxing. He's the CEO of this Unitree Robotics. That's the leading humanoid robot company in China. He reckons that breakthrough could take 2 to 3 years optimistically, or not so optimistically, up to 5 to 10 years from now. Wang He, who is founder of the Chinese robotic startup Galbot, said that he reckons the ChatGPT moment will arrive by 2028. And, so
一台不需要提前编程的人形机器人，只要听懂一句指令就能完成大部分任务。这被称为具身智慧的 ChatGPT 时刻，也是全球科技产业正在争夺的下一个关键节点。大家好，这里是嘎人四绝频道。刚才的精彩片段让我们看到中国人形机器人产业的想象力。早已不止于跳舞、奔跑和展示动作，而是瞄准让机器真正理解现实世界，参与现实工作。从宇树科技到 Galbot， 中国企业正围绕训练数据、开放生态与实际应用加速布局。问题是，这场突破究竟还是等2-3年，还是5到10年？当机器人能够听令行动、随机应变，它会怎样改变工厂、家庭和服务行业？本期节目还将聚焦台海军费变化、恒大崩塌留下的警示，以及中国机器人热潮背后真实的商业逻辑。中国制造的新一轮竞赛究竟是技术拐点还是资本泡沫？答案就在正片中。
Something here about an authoritarian systems blind spot. When everything's going well in an authoritarian system and somebody like Xi Jiayin is cock of the hoop, he is extremely powerful, people pay deference to him, he's got more money than Croesus, it's hard to bring somebody like that down. China is, I would say, it's itself a deferential culture, and it's certainly deferential to people with plenty of power and money. So maybe there's something there. Perhaps others will disagree with me, but perhaps there's something about the relationship between authoritarianism and governance as well.
Yeah, and to add on to that, excellent point, James. The other issue that we're seeing, and it's not just in the real estate sector, but also in robotics, in EVs, in any kind of sector where there are hits or real shapes of a bubble, an industry has become the biggest flex China has when it comes to its high-tech manufacturing sector. Just this week, a Chinese humanoid robot ran faster than Usain Bolt, breaking his 2009 100-meter dash record, with a caveat that it then ran into a wall and had to be carried out on a stretcher. Chinese vendors reportedly account for something like 97% of humanoid robots shipped globally in the first half of this year, and Chinese buyers are absorbing roughly 85% of global demand. I do have to say Usain Bolt is still more charismatic as a runner, but it was amusing to watch these robots run. We've seen a couple of videos in the last few years of, dancing robots from Unitree, now these robots running marathons, now doing sprints. It points to, I think, the fever pitch in domestic enthusiasm for robots. But what I found so fascinating digging deeper into the data is the fact that actually a lot of the robots are not being bought by families or consumers. They're actually being bought by these government-backed training centers that do what is called teleoperation training data. So humans are remotely guiding these robots through physical tasks, and then they sell whatever data they generate from those tasks back to the robot makers to improve their AI. So in a way, it's this kind of circular model as opposed to, direct to consumer or going directly into factories to replace workers. Those are happening, but the lion's share, it seems, the demand is being fed into other sectors of the AI robotics economy. I thought that was super interesting, and that in Chinese domestic demand is still the lion's share of robots demand coming from China. We haven't yet seen an upswing globally, but I think it's only a matter of time, just as we've seen for EVs before it.
Yeah, I mean, I also love these videos. I remember last year that there was that rather sad video of a robot running a race in China, and it fell over and its arm fell off. And then it got up, it staggered back to its feet, and it finished the race. And it had the wires flapping from the arm that it had lost. And it was almost elicited sort of human feelings towards the robot. I felt quite sorry for it, you know. But back to the main point on this. Is the business model for humanoid robots in any way sustainable, or is this just another big bubble? You know what? My sense of this is that it's a little bit like the early days of Amazon. I can remember when Amazon was not making any money and everybody was saying, oh, you know, I don't know if this internet will ever catch on. Not sure about selling stuff over the internet. And now we see, I think Amazon is capitalized at close to $3 trillion US. My sense is that there will be a market for humanoid robots, a big, big market. It's just that the technology has not yet caught up with the opportunity. And I would say that what's happening at the moment is, rather interestingly, that the phase of market development is focused on training robots so that the robots themselves can turn themselves into a technology that people actually want to buy, you know. And I think that a lot of these training centers and the universities and others in China that have bought these robots, what they're really trying to do is to sell the training data that they get from the robots. And it turns out that this training data is actually really quite expensive. Something as simple as a 5-minute robot dance. I mean, we've all seen the robots do the dance and all of that. But if you want to buy the data that underlies that 5-minute robot dance, you might be paying 1 million renminbi for it. That's 148,000 US. So that illustrates how much of a gold rush there is right now for humanoid robot training data. And the reason there's such a gold rush for that is because everybody in the industry, well, I don't know about everybody, but a lot of the big names in the Chinese industry are transfixed by a point in the future. And that point in the future is being called the ChatGPT moment for humanoid robots, or for embodied intelligence. And that effectively is when you can just say to a humanoid robot, without pre-programming it, you just say, do this or do that. And it will be able to do about 80% of those tasks. That moment, which is called the ChatGPT moment for humanoid robots, is estimated by Wang Xingxing. He's the CEO of this Unitree Robotics. That's the leading humanoid robot company in China. He reckons that breakthrough could take 2 to 3 years, optimistically, or not so optimistically, up to 5 to 10 years from now. Wang He, who is the founder of the Chinese robotic startup Galbot, said that he reckons the ChatGPT moment will arrive by 2028. And, you know, so obviously he's a lot more optimistic than Wang Xingxing. So to me, this is key, because after that moment has arrived, I can see so many use cases for humanoid robots. They can follow commands that are issued off the cuff. They can adapt to their real-time situation without endless pre-programming to do narrow tasks. So it all depends. When is the ChatGPT moment coming? If it's going to come soon, then I would say we're going to see revenues for these robot companies rise sharply. But if it's going to take 10 years, I think a lot of these companies are going to be in the wilderness. They are not going to have strong earnings.
So I love the fact, James, that you talked about the ChatGPT moment for the humanoid robotics space. And here it reminds me of this divergence that we're seeing in the debate on world models. So effectively, the next generation, I think, of AI that goes beyond the LLMs that we are currently experiencing with ChatGPT and Claude to the physical AI space where, robots and other devices are interacting with the real world and delivering intelligence and knowledge based on the physical world. Right now, there's a debate as to whether or not you go the route of, on the one hand, regenerating and simulating the details of the real world and using that to train the robots on, or if you create an abstraction or a prediction model of the world and use the robots to train on that data. Yan LeCun, for instance, at Army Labs, or Feifei Li at in her own world models startup, they represent, I think, the very differing approaches between the two. In China, I sense that they favor, the idea of re-simulating the world and getting the robots to train within that. Unitree CEO Wang Xingxing is saying that he really wants China to be a leader in the embodied AI space and has an open source ecosystem for that, for the training of robots that would obviously be open to the public to view. So I do think that this is actually quite important in this bigger debate of where we land in the embodied AI and physical AI, especially if we see China leading in terms of its models. Right now, a lot of it is still in the early stages of R&D. So for a company like Unitree that just IPO'd, $905 million IPO, it really is the darling of China's robotics sector. So their 2025 revenue was $252 million US dollars, and 75% of that, around 75% of that was for research and education, as opposed to industrials and consumers. Now that will probably shift over time, but that suggests that we're still in the R&D phase of trying to figure out how do we actually deploy the data.
We've just been talking about exports of various Chinese goods, including humanoid robots. And my sense is that this year is going to be another bumper year for Chinese exports in total. I would say that this year, for the full year, Chinese exports could total about 4.4 trillion US dollars. That would be up about 18% from last year. And I also think that the Chinese trade surplus is likely to exceed, but not by a huge margin, but nevertheless exceed last year's record of 1.2 trillion US dollars. That's obviously a very politically sensitive number between China and its trade partners, whether that trade partner would be the United States or the European Union and other countries around the world. So I'm focusing in on that, as you mentioned.
今天这期节目，我们从台海局势、恒大崩塌和中国人形机器人三个看似不同的话题出发，最后其实指向了同一个问题：当一个国家面对外部压力、内部转型和技术竞赛时，真正决定未来的，往往不只是投入了多少钱，或者制造出了多少轰动新闻，而是这些资源能不能转化成真实、稳定、可持续的能力。先看台海，台湾提出创纪录的国防预算恢复更长期的义务役，并通过高强度军事演习模拟城市作战、通讯中断、交通要道防守以及封锁状态下的社会运转。这些变化说明，台湾对于安全环境的判断正在发生变化。过去那种把战争看成遥远风险的心态，正在逐渐让位于更现实、更具体的准备。但必须强调，增加预算和举行演习，并不等于战争一定会发生，更不等于任何一方已经做出最后决定。它反映的是不确定性上升之后，各方都在为最坏情况增加筹码。台海问题最复杂的地方，也正在于这种不确定性。美国是否会在冲突中直接介入，始终没有一个绝对明确的答案。所谓战略模糊，既是威慑，也是一种保留空间的安排。它让对手无法轻易判断行动代价，同时也让台湾社会无法完全依赖外部承诺。对台湾而言，这意味着不能把安全寄托在一句口号或某一笔尚未落地的军售上。对美国而言，任何政策调整都可能影响两岸判断。对大陆而言，军事压力越强，也可能越促使台湾加快自身防卫建设。乌克兰的经验则提供了另一个重要提醒：面对实力更强的对手，军队规模当然重要， 但动员能力、社会意志、指挥体系、后勤储备以及无人机、反舰武器等不对称能力，同样可能改变战场结果。战争从来不是单纯比拼装备数量，而是比拼谁能更快适应变化，谁能让军队、政府、产业和民众形成有效协同。台湾增加国防投入，真正要回答的也不是预算数字够不够大，而是这些钱能否变成可用的弹药、可靠的通讯、清晰的指挥、充足的储备，以及面对危机时能够持续运转的社会体系。接下来是恒大，许家印从中国首富到被判无期徒刑。恒大从房地产巨头到深陷债务和财务造假，这不仅是一家企业的兴衰，也是一整个发展模式的缩影。在房地产高速扩张的年代，土地、融资、地方财政和企业规模彼此推动，企业越做越大，地方越依赖土地和投资，投资者也越容易相信规模本身就是安全的。可是，当收入被虚增，债务不断滚动，审计和监管没有及时揭示风险，繁荣就可能只是被包装出来的幻象。恒大事件最值得警惕的地方，不只是他留下了多么庞大的债务，更是他曾经看起来如此成功。他拥有耀眼的品牌、跨行业的布局、名人效应和资本市场的追捧，甚至获得了许多机构与公众的信任。正因为如此，真正危险的风险往往不是人人看得见的失败，而是被掌声遮住的失真。当所有人都相信某个行业只会增长，当地方政府都在扶植自己的龙头，当资金只追逐热门概念，企业就可能被鼓励去追求速度和规模，而不是现金流、治理和真实需求。这也解释了为什么今天的电动车、太阳能、电池和机器人产业既代表技术进步，也可能出现新的泡沫。地方政府之间的竞争可以带来投资、人才和产业链集聚，但如果每个地方都要打造自己的明星企业，重复建设和产能过剩就难以避免。大量公司涌入同一赛道，短期内会制造热闹，长期却必须接受市场淘汰。投资者需要看的不只是估值涨了多少，融资规模有多大，而是企业有没有稳定客户、真实收入、核心技术和足够长的生存能力。人形机器人尤其如此。现在很多机器人并不是普通家庭买回家使用，而是进入政府支持的训练中心、大学和研究机构，通过真人远程操控积累数据，再把数据交给制造商训练人工智能。这说明当前行业的核心竞争可能还不是机器人马上替代工人，而是谁能更快获得高质量的真实操作数据。机器人会不会迎来属于自己的 ChatGPT 时刻？关键在于它能否听懂临时指令，理解真实环境，并完成大部分没有提前写入程序的任务。如果技术突破很快，今天的训练投入可能成为未来商业化的基础；如果突破需要更长时间，许多依靠概念和融资维持的企业就会承受巨大压力。同时，机器人走向全球，还要面对价格、可靠性、数据安全和地缘政治等问题。它不是一部只负责传递信息的手机，而是能够进入家庭、工厂和公共空间，观察环境并执行动作的实体设备。一旦涉及网络连接、传感器、远程控制和数据储存，消费者自然会追问：数据由谁掌握？系统是否透明？设备有没有后门？发生故障后谁来负责？这些问题会决定人形机器人能否真正走进世界市场，也会决定技术竞争最终是开放合作，还是被安全疑虑切割成不同阵营。把这三条线放在一起，我们看到的是同一种时代逻辑。安全领域需要把威胁转化为可执行的准备，金融领域需要把繁荣还原成真实的资产和现金流，科技领域则需要把令人兴奋的演示转化为可靠的产品和持续的需求。无论是国防预算、企业估值，还是机器人出货量，数字本身都不能自动证明成功。真正重要的是数字背后有没有能力，有没有责任，有没有经得起时间和压力检验的制度。对于普通观众来说，这期内容也提供了一个观察世界的方法。看到军事新闻时，不要只问局势会不会爆发，还要看各方正在准备什么。看到企业神话时，不要只看创办人的财富和品牌，还要追问收入是否真实，债务是否可控。看到新技术走红时，也不要只被速度和估值吸引，而要判断它是否解决了现实问题，能否进入真实生活。越是喧闹的时代，越需要保留一点冷静。区分事实、预测和宣传，也区分真正的进步与暂时的泡沫。台海局势仍在变化，中国经济仍在调整，机器人产业也还处在从研发走向应用的早期阶段。未来会怎样？没有人能够给出100%确定的答案。 但我们可以持续追踪那些更可靠的信号，政策是否落地，产业是否产生真实利润，社会是否具备应对风险的韧性，以及技术是否真正改善了人的生活。感谢你的收看，我们下期继续从数据和事实出发，拆解更多国际局势与中国变化。欢迎在评论区分享你对台海防务、恒大教训以及人形机器人前景的看法，也别忘了点赞订阅，观看更多精彩视频。